I am the last surviving officer of the Kthari Expeditionary Fleet. If you are hearing this, then everything we believed was wrong. We were not reckless conquerors. We were not blind. The Kthari do not go to war without certainty. For centuries, our empire expanded with precision, every target analyzed, every species categorized, every outcome predicted. And when we discovered humanity, we followed the same process. We observed them from the edges of their system. A young species, barely unified, still divided by internal conflicts. Their communications were chaotic, thousands of languages, countless ideologies, constant disagreement. Their networks were filled with noise, entertainment, arguments, misinformation. To us, they looked disorganized, primitive. Their physiology was unimpressive. Fragile bone structures, limited natural weaponry. No claws, no natural armor, no venom. Their environment was harsh, yet they remained physically weak compared to most known species. Even their technology seemed inefficient. Projectile weapons, chemical propulsion, explosive-based warfare. Crude, but inelegant. We had faced far worse. Our war council concluded the same thing every simulation did. Humanity would fall in less than one of their planetary cycles. Some among us even argued it would take less. I was there when the final decision was made. I remember the chamber, silent, confident, certain. There was no fear, no hesitation, only expectation. We did not see a threat. We saw an opportunity. Our first mistake was underestimating their awareness. Humans knew we were there. Not immediately, but faster than predicted. Their telescopes, their scattered observation systems, their obsessive curiosity, it all worked in their favor. Within days of our arrival at the edge of their system, they had noticed anomalies. Within weeks, they knew it was us. Their response was unusual. There was no unified message. No single leader addressing us. Instead, thousands of signals flooded our receivers. Some attempted diplomacy. Some demanded we leave. Some threatened us. Jokes about us. At first, we assumed it was a mistranslation. But no, our linguistics division confirmed it. Humor. Mockery. Even as an unknown fleet hovered at the edge of their system, many humans responded with sarcasm. One transmission became infamous among our officers. A human voice, distorted by their crude technology, said, "If you're here to invade, at least give us a heads up so we can make it interesting." There was laughter in the background. We archived it as evidence of their psychological instability. We should have archived it as a warning. Protocol dictated that we initiate a controlled first contact. A demonstration of superiority. Enough force to ensure compliance, but not enough to destroy the asset. Their homeworld. We positioned our fleet within visible range. Not close enough to provoke immediate retaliation, but close enough that they could see us. Thousands of ships, perfectly aligned, blocking the light of their star. A message was prepared. Formal. Final. Surrender and be integrated into the Kthari Empire. Resist and face eradication. I oversaw the transmission myself. For a moment, there was silence. Then the humans responded. It wasn't what we expected. There was no panic. No desperate pleas. No immediate surrender. Instead, we received a patchwork of replies. Military channels activating, civilian networks surging, encrypted signals bouncing across their planet. They were mobilizing. But that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was the tone. Excitement. We intercepted communications between their soldiers, their pilots, their commanders. Some were afraid. That was expected. But many were not. They spoke of finally knowing. Of the big one. Of first contact gone wrong. And then there was that word again. Fun. I remember one transmission clearly. A human pilot, preparing for launch, said, "All right, boys, looks like we're not alone. Let's go say hello." More laughter. Not nervous. Not forced. Genuine. Our second mistake was assuming this was bravado. We believed it was a facade. A psychological defense against overwhelming odds. A way to mask fear. We were wrong. Humans do not hide fear. They carry it with them. And then they move forward anyway. When their first ships launched, we expected disorganization. Their formations were uneven. Their vessels varied in design, in size, in purpose. It looked chaotic, nothing like our perfect, symmetrical fleets. But there was intent behind that chaos. We just couldn't see it yet. They approached us without hesitation. No delay. No attempt to negotiate further. No visible chain of command. Just movement. Direct. Unpredictable. I gave the order to hold position. We would let them come closer. Let them witness our power. Let them understand the scale of their mistake. That was the plan. That was always the plan. But as their ships closed the distance, something began to unsettle me. Not their weapons. Not their numbers. Their behavior. They were accelerating. Faster than safety protocols would allow. Faster than their own vessels should have been capable of sustaining. Some of them were already taking damage, heat signatures rising, structural integrity failing. And still, they pushed forward. No hesitation. No retreat. That was the moment I felt it. For the first time since the campaign began. Uncertainty. Then the first human transmission reached us on an open channel. No encryption. No formal structure. Just a voice. Amused. You picked the wrong species. And then, they fired. We expected their first attack to fail. It had to. No species with such crude technology could challenge a Cathari fleet head-on. Our shields were calibrated for energy-based weaponry, our targeting systems precise beyond error, our formations mathematically perfect. And yet, the moment the humans fired, everything began to unravel. Their weapons were primitive. Kinetic rounds. Explosives. Unguided projectiles. I remember thinking, this is their best? Then the first impact struck. Our forward shields flared, not from energy dispersion, but from sheer force. Physical impact. Momentum transferred with brutal simplicity. Their projectiles didn't try to bypass our defenses. They overwhelmed them. Thousands of rounds slammed into our shield matrix, each one insignificant on its own, but together, relentless. Our systems struggled to compensate. They were not designed for this kind of assault. Not for this kind of persistence. Return fire, I ordered. Our fleet responded instantly. Precision beams cut through the void, striking human vessels with perfect accuracy. Ships disintegrated. Hulls collapsed. Entire formations vanished in moments. By all logic, that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The humans didn't break formation. They didn't retreat. They accelerated. I watched as one of their ships, already damaged, venting atmosphere, altered course. Not away from us. Toward us. Directly toward one of our cruisers. Target and eliminate, I commanded. We fired. We hit it. We should have destroyed it. But it kept coming. Its engines burned beyond safe limits, its structure tearing apart under the strain. And still it came. Collision imminent, one of my officers reported. There was confusion in his voice. He couldn't understand what he was seeing. Neither could I. The human ship didn't attempt to evade. It didn't slow down. It didn't signal surrender. It rammed us. The impact was catastrophic. Our cruiser's shields collapsed under the sudden kinetic overload. The hull fractured. Systems failed in cascading waves. For a moment, everything, every calculation, every projection, simply stopped making sense. We had not prepared for this. Why would we? No rational species would sacrifice an entire vessel, and everyone aboard it, for a single strike. No rational species would choose certain death as a tactic. The humans did. And then they did it again. Across the battlefield, similar events unfolded. Human ships, crippled or outmatched, redirected themselves into our formations. Some detonated prematurely. Others held together just long enough to make impact. Each one left damage far beyond its size. Each one cost us more than we had calculated. This is inefficient, one of my analysts said. His voice was strained, trying to force logic into chaos. They are wasting resources. No, I replied. For the first time, I understood something fundamental. They are trading them. The realization came too late. We adjusted our formations. Spread out. Increased distance. Prioritized long-range engagement. Standard countermeasures. It didn't matter. The humans closed the gap anyway. They moved like a storm, unpredictable, shifting, impossible to model. Their formations dissolved and reformed constantly. Individual ships broke away without warning, only to reappear in new vectors. There was no single pattern, no consistent strategy, and yet it worked. Our targeting systems struggled, not because they lacked precision, but because the humans refused to behave predictably. They made decisions that defied probability. They chose options that no simulation would prioritize. They turned chaos into a weapon. Then we encountered their ground forces. We had secured a forward position on one of their outer colonies, a small installation, strategically insignificant. It should have been an easy victory. Establish a foothold. Gather resources. Prepare for planetary integration. Instead, we found the Frontline. Human soldiers. They were smaller than expected, lighter, less armored than many species we had faced. Individually, they were nothing remarkable. But together, they were something else entirely. Our forces advanced with standard protocol. Suppression fire, coordinated movement, tactical positioning. The humans responded differently. They didn't hold positions. They didn't fall back in an orderly manner. They moved constantly, advancing, retreating, circling, never where our projections placed them. And they made noise. Not commands. Not signals. Noise. Shouting. Laughing. Calling out to one another in ways our translators struggled to process. Some of it was tactical, yes, but much of it seemed unnecessary. Unstructured. Chaotic. And then one of them charged. He had lost an arm. Our weapons had taken it. The wound was severe. Fatal by all known standards. He should have collapsed. He should have retreated. Instead, he ran toward us. There was something in his hand. A device. Crude. Explosive. He held it with his remaining arm, clutching it against his body as he closed the distance. Neutralize, I ordered. Our soldiers fired. They hit him. Multiple times. He didn't stop. I remember the way he moved. Not with precision. Not with strategy. But with intent. A single, undeniable purpose. He reached our line. And then, nothing. When my vision cleared, a section of our formation was gone. Not damaged. Gone. The human was gone too. Silence followed. Just for a moment. Then, from the smoke and debris, more of them emerged. Advancing. That was when one of my officers spoke. Quietly. Almost to himself. They're not afraid. I watched as human soldiers moved through fire that should have driven them back. As they advanced under conditions that should have broken them. As they fought with a ferocity that had no clear limit. No, I said. My voice felt different. Heavier. They are. I paused, watching another human rise after being struck, dragging themselves forward instead of away. They just don't stop. And in that moment, for the first time, I understood what the Frontline truly was. It wasn't a position. It wasn't a location. It was wherever the humans decided to stand. And once they stood there, it became hell. We tried to restore order. That is what the Cathari do. When faced with unexpected variables, we analyze. We adapt. We correct. That is how we built an empire. That is how we win wars. But against humans, correction came too slowly. After the initial engagements, we withdrew our frontline units and restructured. New formations. Wider spacing. Reinforced shields tuned specifically for kinetic impact. Predictive models updated with human behavioral anomalies. We learned from our losses. We believed we did. Humans rely on unpredictability, our analysts concluded. Remove their ability to improvise, and they will collapse. It made sense. Every species has a pattern. Even chaos, when observed long enough, reveals structure. We just needed time. Humans didn't give it to us. Our next engagement began with advantage. We deployed cloaking arrays, Advanced systems that bent light and masked our energy signatures. To human sensors, we would be invisible, untouchable. We positioned ourselves around their fleet, surrounding them without detection. For the first time since the war began, we had control. Wait for optimal firing solution, I ordered. We would strike all at once. Decisive. Overwhelming. No room for their chaos. But before we could fire, one of our ships exploded. There was no warning. No detection. Just sudden, violent destruction. Report. I demanded. Unknown impact, came the reply. No visible source. Another explosion. Then another. Confusion spread across the fleet. Our sensors showed nothing. No incoming fire. No targeting locks. No energy signatures. By all measurable data, we were not under attack. And yet, we were being destroyed. Then we intercepted a human transmission. Unencrypted. Open. Hey, I think I hit something. Another voice responded. Yeah, keep firing. You'll hit more. They were shooting blindly. At first, we dismissed it as coincidence. It had to be. They couldn't see us. They couldn't track us. They had no way of knowing our positions. And yet, their shots kept finding us. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to break our formation. Enough to force movement. Enough to disrupt our perfect, calculated ambush. How? One of my officers asked. No one answered. Because there was no answer that made sense. Later, we would understand. Humans do not always need precision. They rely on instinct. On probability. On something far less predictable than logic. And sometimes, they guess right. We abandoned cloaking. It was no longer an advantage. It was a liability. Our next strategy was communication disruption. If humans thrived on coordination and adaptability, then we would sever their ability to communicate. Jamming fields were deployed across the battlefield. Signals scrambled. Frequencies blocked. Their networks collapsed. Their transmissions fell silent. For a brief moment, we believed we had won. Then the humans kept fighting. No hesitation. No confusion. No loss of momentum. They've lost coordination, one of my analysts said. Maintain pressure. They cannot sustain this. But they did. We observed their movements closely, trying to find the flaw. The delay. The breakdown. It never came. Instead, we saw something worse. They didn't need their networks. Human soldiers began using visual signals. Hand gestures. Body language. Pre-learned patterns of movement. They adapted instantly. Not hours. Not days. Instantly. Where our forces required centralized command, human units operated independently. Each group moved as if it already knew what the others would do. Each soldier acted as if they didn't need orders. Because they didn't. They're decentralized, I realized. More than that, one of my officers replied. They're redundant. The word stayed with me. Redundant. We targeted their commanders next. Standard protocol. Remove leadership and the structure collapses. Our strikes were precise. Effective. We eliminated their officers. Their strategists. Their chain of command. And then, nothing changed. No disruption. No confusion. No retreat. The humans kept fighting. In some case, they fought harder. We intercepted another transmission. A human voice, strained but steady. Commands gone. You know what to do. Another voice answered. Yeah. Same as always. That was it. No panic. No hesitation. Just continuation. We had removed their leadership. And it didn't matter. Every human soldier was capable of becoming the next leader. Not formally. Not by rank. But by action. They didn't wait for orders. They became them. That was when our models began to fail completely. There was no central point to target. No structure to dismantle. No pattern to break. They evolved mid-battle. Not biologically. But tactically. Every engagement changed them. Every loss refined them. Every mistake corrected in real time. We could not keep up. And then, they started learning us. Our formations. Our timing. Our reactions. They anticipated our moves before we made them. What had begun as chaos became something far more dangerous. Controlled chaos. Weaponized unpredictability. We were no longer fighting a disorganized species. We were fighting a system that improved with every second we engaged it. And for the first time since the war began, I considered the possibility we might not win. Not because we were weaker. Not because we lacked resources. But because we were too slow. And humans learn too fast. By the fourth cycle of engagement, we stopped calling it a war. War implies structure. War implies limits. War implies that both sides are trying to end it. Humans were not trying to end it. They were experiencing it. That realization did not come from the battlefield. It came from a prisoner. We had finally captured one alive. It was not easy. Human soldiers did not surrender. Not in the traditional sense. Even when wounded, even when surrounded, they resisted until their bodies could no longer continue. This one had collapsed. Severe injuries, blood loss, structural damage that should have rendered him unconscious. And yet, when we brought him into containment, he was awake, and he was smiling. I was present for the interrogation. I needed to understand. Not their tactics. Not their technology. The humans sat restrained, though the restraints were unnecessary. His body was failing. Our medical scans confirmed it. He would not survive long. Still, he looked at us with something I could not immediately identify. Not fear. Not hatred. Recognition. "You're the ones in charge?" he asked. Our translators processed the language quickly. His tone was conversational. Casual. "Yes," I replied. He nodded slightly, as if confirming something to himself. "Good," he said. "Saves time." There was a pause. I began the interrogation. "Why do your forces engage in self-destructive tactics?" I asked. "Why do you continue to advance under conditions where survival is statistically impossible?" He listened. Actually listened. As if the question mattered. Then he gave a small, tired laugh. "Statistically impossible, huh?" He shifted slightly, wincing from the pain, but still focused. "That your way of saying we're supposed to quit?" "That is the logical conclusion," I replied. He looked at me for a long moment. And then he said something that changed everything. "That's the difference." Silence filled the chamber. "You think this is about logic," he continued. "About winning clean. About surviving." His breathing was getting weaker. But his voice was steady. "For us, it's simpler than that." I leaned forward. "Explain." He smiled again. "If we stop," he said, pausing briefly, "you win." It was such a simple statement, and yet it carried a weight I could not immediately process. "You are already losing," I replied. He shrugged slightly. "Yeah," he said. "Probably." No denial. No argument. Just acceptance. "Then why continue?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. He looked past me. At the other officers. At the chamber. At the reality of his situation. And then, he looked back at me. "Because we can." The words felt wrong. Incomplete. "That is not a sufficient reason," I said. "It is for us." Another pause. "You ever notice something?" he continued. I did not respond. "You guys fight to win," he said. "Every move, every plan, it's all about the end result." "That is the purpose of war," I replied. He shook his head slightly. "Not for us." His eyes locked onto mine. "We fight because we're already in it." There was no hesitation. No doubt. Winning's just a bonus. The chamber fell silent again. Something shifted inside me. Not understanding. Not agreement. Something else. "You are sacrificing your own lives for no strategic gain," I said. He let out a weak breath, something close to a laugh. "You still don't get it." His voice was fading now. "We're not sacrificing," he said. "We're choosing." The distinction was subtle, but it mattered. "You choose to die?" I asked. He met my gaze. "No," he said. The pause. "We choose to fight anyway." Our scans began to alert us. His condition was deteriorating rapidly. Time was running out. There is no scenario in which your species wins this conflict, I said. It was not a threat. It was a statement. He nodded slowly. Maybe, he said. Another breath. Weaker this time. But here's the thing. I leaned closer. You're gonna remember us. The words were barely above a whisper. No matter how this ends, you're not walking away from it clean. And then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Also, he added, his voice almost gone now. Thanks. I froze. Explain, I said. But he didn't. His eyes closed. And for a moment, I thought he was gone. Then, with the last of his strength, he spoke one final time. For making it interesting. Silence. No movement. No signal. The human was dead. I stood there for a long time. Processing. Replaying every word. Every expression. Every contradiction. This was not a species fighting for survival. It was not a species fighting for dominance. It was something else entirely. Something far more dangerous. Humans did not fear war. They did not avoid it. They did not even fully understand it, the way we did. They embraced it. Not because they wanted destruction, but because once they were pushed into it, they refused to step back. And in that moment, I understood the truth. The battlefield was not where humans were strongest. It was where they became themselves. And that was the real horror. This will be my last transmission. There is nothing left to report. Nothing left to command. Nothing left to save. The Cathari expeditionary fleet is gone. Not defeated in a single decisive battle. Not destroyed by overwhelming force. Erased. Piece by piece. Engagement by engagement. Mistake by mistake. Until there was nothing left. Our final stand did not happen where we expected. It wasn't near their homeworld. It wasn't at a strategic stronghold. It wasn't even planned. It happened because they followed us. We attempted retreat, regrouping, recalculation, preservation of remaining assets. Standard procedure. Humans did not allow it. They pursued. Not in perfect formation. Not with overwhelming numbers. But with persistence. Always there. Always closing the distance. Always adapting. We destroyed their ships. More than I can count. We eliminated their forces. Again and again. Still, they came. It didn't matter how many we destroyed. It didn't matter how far we ran. They did not stop. At first, we believed they were desperate. That they were throwing everything they had left into one final effort. But that assumption died quickly. Because they were not running out. They were cycling. Fresh forces replaced the fallen. New tactics replaced the failed. Different approaches, different angles, different methods of attack. It was not a final push. It was a process. A continuous, relentless process. They were learning us, while exhausting us. Our systems began to fail. Not from damage. From strain. Too many engagements. Too many variables. Too many unknowns. Our predictions stopped working. There was no longer a safe option. No reliable outcome. No guaranteed survival. Only delay. And humans are very patient when they choose to be. Our last fleet position was established near a dead system. No strategic value. No resources. Just distance. If we went far enough, they would stop. They didn't. The final engagement was quiet. No grand formations. No overwhelming displays of force. Just fragments. What remained of us? What remained of them? Drifting in the void. We opened fire first. Out of protocol. Out of instinct. They responded. Not with rage. Not with desperation. With precision. Controlled. Measured. Evolved. They had changed. Chaos was still there. But now it had shape. Every movement had purpose. Every action had intent. They had taken everything we were and adapted around it. Our strengths became irrelevant. Our advantages became predictable. And our end became inevitable. My command vessel was among the last. Systems failing. Crew diminished. Options gone. I watched the battlefield through a fractured display. Human ships moved around us. Not rushing. Not hesitating. Certain. One of them approached. closer than any had before. It did not fire. It simply held position. Observing. Waiting. A transmission. Open channel. I hesitated. Then accepted. A human appeared on the screen. Not armored. Not commanding. Just a person. They looked at me the same way the prisoner had. Not with hatred. Not with fear. With understanding. It doesn't have to end like this, they said. The words were unexpected. You can stand down. I stared at the screen. At the being that had destroyed everything I commanded. Everything I believed in. Why? I asked. A simple question. Because you lost, they said. No cruelty. No arrogance. Just truth. And we didn't, they added. I felt something then. Not anger. Not shame. Clarity. You will continue, I said. It was not a question. The human nodded slightly. Yeah, they said. Until there is nothing left to fight, I finished. Another nod. I understood. Completely. This would not end with us. This would not end with this war. Because humans do not fight to finish wars. They fight until there is nothing left that can start one. I closed the channel. There was nothing left to say. I have transmitted this record across all known frequencies. To any who will receive it. To any who will listen. Learn from us. We were not weak. We were not careless. We were strong. Do not measure humans by their technology. Do not measure them by their biology. Do not measure them by your understanding of war. Because they will exceed it. Every time. If you encounter them, do not provoke them. Do not challenge them. Do not give them a reason. Because once they have won, they will not stop. They will not break. They will not forget. And if you push them far enough, they will not just fight you. They will outlast you. This is my final warning. From the last survivor of the Cathari Expeditionary Fleet. Do not make humanity your enemy. Transmission ends.